Right, good evening everybody. Welcome to Performance Management Board. I'm assuming everybody knows who I am, but just for the sake of the record, because you'll understand why just for a moment, I'm Neil Clark, I'm the new chairman of PMB. And as such, this is going to be recorded, so Rushcliffe Borough Council is committed to being open and transparent. And so from time to time, there will be audio recordings of meetings which are open to the public, and this is one of those cases, except of course where there might be confidential or commercially sensitive information divulged. So tonight's meeting is going to be recorded for training purposes. I was going to say experimental, but for training purposes. Okay, so mind your P's and Q's, and R's and S's and T's and whatever else. So, with that, let's move straight on. Item 1, apologies for absence. I'm not sure if there are any.
We do. We have apologies from Councillor Plant, and substituting Councillor Plant is Councillor Edwards.
Welcome. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any? No, none. Okay, item 3, minutes of the meeting held on 6th of March. I wasn't there, so I'm relying on returning members of the board, which I think there's probably about half of you were here on the previous year. So I'm relying on those who were present to speak up, please, because obviously I can't do anything about the minutes. Councillor Matthews. Councillor Thurman, I think have we got to switch this? Yeah, we
need it for me.
We have to. No, let me just explain. We have to switch the microphones on for the recording.
Oh, okay. I propose that these were a true record of the meeting.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Jeffries. All those in favour? Thank you. Anybody against? No. Good. Thank you very much. Right, so without further ado, let's get on to item 4 and the first main item, which is Eastleigh Leisure Centre annual reports. And very Councillor Shearings.
Do we need to go through the action response sheet first before we move on to item 4?
Is that usual?
It is usual, Chairman, but hopefully we've covered them off on the page. But yeah, I'll just go through them quickly. So there was a request from the previous chairman to attend a committee meeting of the Edwalton Golf Club Committee, and the invitation, I understand, was issued for that. I can't give you any further feedback as to his attendance at the meeting, any feedback from that, but the action was carried out. The proposal to establish a community interest company, which was the Lex Leisure company for Edwalton Golf Course. A briefing note was sent to all councillors at the end of March, so hopefully you've had a look at that. If you need that sending again, just let us know. That was also the subject of a cabinet report that was agreed by cabinet. The link to the Streetwise video was also sent out on the 15th of March again, and that's on the extranet as well. So if anybody needs that resending, or just let us know. The suggestion about looking at the unspent community support grant money was raised, and that's going to be picked up via member development group. So that's on the work programme for member development group. So once that date's confirmed, 18th of July. Okay, and then the final item was the scrutiny matrix to be circulated to members of the committee. So that was sent out to the committee chairs and vice chairs. Although actually I think the action was for it to be sent to members of the committee, so we'll check that all the committee members have got that, not just the chairs and vice chairs. But to remind you, there are paper copies of that scrutiny matrix in the members' room as well. Okay.
So are these not part of the minutes then?
They are part of the minutes,
Right.
but we have some. We do usually pick them up.
So it
On
wants to be a
that
separate
page.
item then,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Okay, we can
Or
put it on
it's
as
part of the minutes.
We can put it as a separate item.
Otherwise you end up discussing the whole of the minutes all over again. Right, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. We just need to change the date, 29th of March. It should be 2018.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Any more queries? No? Good. Right. Item 4. Eastleigh Leisure Centre. So I'll now try again and welcome Ben Neath and Ed Surplus to this meeting. Are you wanting to... sorry. So Mr Birch, if you'd like to introduce this item prior to our presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Just for any members that don't know me, my name is Darryl Birch. I'm the Service Manager for Neighbourhoods. A lot of you will have dealt with me on various issues, particularly around the waste and recycling work that I also run. What some of you probably aren't aware of, I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of the Contracts Hub, because a number of contracts that I now oversee with the team do get reported to the Performance Management Board. So with 6 main contracts that we actually look after, there's the Glendale Golf Course contract, there's the Parkwood Leisure Centre contract, City Council vehicle maintenance, the Streetwise contract, the joint partnership we have with Box Over car parking, and also particularly relevant tonight obviously is the old Carillion Eastleigh PFI contract, and I will just explain some changes that happened about that, because obviously that's now run by Mighty. I'm pleased to be joined by Ben and Ed from Mighty. They're going to provide members with a short presentation, and I'm quite happy to answer any questions as part of the scrutiny process. With regard to the report, it should be noted it covers the period January to December 2017, when Carillion was still in charge. I think it's worth pointing out at this point that following the collapse of Carillion in January 2018, it's very much been business as usual, and it's credit to Ben and his team. So Ben has TUPE'd over from Carillion to Mighty. It's very much credit to Ben and his team that they've managed to keep performance running at a very high level. Albeit, I will say to the 2 gentlemen on my left, it's early days, and can assure members we will be keeping a very close eye on performance at Eastleigh over the next few months. The actual contract's not run by them, Rushcliffe. It's run by the County Council and Eastleigh Schools, and runs until 2027. Rushcliffe spend around £500,000 a year inputting into the contract, but I would again explain that includes the full maintenance of the building and also the day-to-day management of the leisure facilities, and at the end of the term that building will be returned back to Rushcliffe as a fully functioning, up-to-date leisure centre. How do we manage performance? Well, Helen is part of the team. Helen carries out regular monthly inspections, rigorously checking everything from cleansing to health and safety performance. And we also have a quarterly strategic meeting as well, which myself or Dave Banks will attend with Ben and with Ben's managers. With regard to performance, I'm not going to steal all their thunder, but it's fair to say that during the calendar year, performance was really good. Ones I've picked out, usage up by 4,000 visits, mainly due to an increase in health and fitness usage. An excellent 97% customer satisfaction rating. Ben and his team also carry out a range of activities and offer sessions. One that really stuck out to me, which we did last year, was giving free gym inductions to all Year 9 pupils at the local school. They also work very closely with the local community and also part of the business group as well. And as you're all aware, there's a lot of new development in Eastleigh, and they're working very closely with the developers to give out free have-a-go leisure centre passes to try and encourage more usage. So that's me. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Ben first, and Ed. Thank you.
Hey, welcome.
Okay, so obviously I now work for Mighty, but during the calendar year 2017 was a brilliant employee and did last year. We replaced the whole of the sports hall floor, so that was completely refurbished. We installed LED lights in both the sports hall and the gymnasium. That was just on, we had 280,000 visits, which was about 4,000 visits on the previous year. We started to use Course Pro to deliver our swimming lessons. Fantastic little kit, allows parents to check it from home and see how the kids are progressing, and it's really good tool for retention for us. And it also gave them the capability to pay online for their swimming lessons, which is something else that probably hadn't been able to offer. So there are significant children on our swim lessons every single week, which is a really good figure. We've joined the Eastleigh Traders Association, so within the village there are a group of local organisations and businesses that meet every 6 to 8 weeks and try and encourage people to attend and use their businesses. In 2017 we held quite a lot of the monthly or 6-weekly meetings at the lessons as well, so we use that for that. We had a good satisfaction level, so that's people who are either satisfied or very satisfied. So only sort of 7% of people were sort of dissatisfied with things we did or weren't happy.
Great, well done, thank you, gentlemen, thanks very much indeed. So I'm sure that people will be bursting with questions. I'll just start off with one. I'm not sure actually whether it's Mr. Birch or whether it's you two, but it relates to the targets. And the report says here it's been the same target since life began. So is that very meaningful? And do you look upon the target that you are given as meaningful because you're exceeding it anyway, and the population of Eastleigh is going to rocket, and so I would hope that very soon you'll be double the target. So wouldn't you appreciate having a stretch target and surely having the target reviewed every year so that you're always stretching yourself to make sure that you are getting more, I was going to say bums on seats, but people through the door.
Yes, yeah. We've set sort of internal targets, if you like, yourself, but I know we touched on having a look at that previously. So.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's probably fair to say that when we inherited this contract into the contract hub, you're correct that the target had been long-standing at 180,000 users, which had far been exceeded. So we have set a new target of 223,000, which is a 3% uplift compared to last year for this year. But you're correct in with all the other contracts now, we will sit down with the service provider and we will try and set challenging targets for them.
And with the population expanding, I know this is historical, but there's no reason why we shouldn't look to the future as well. Are you equipped to take, I don't know, I'm just pulling out of the air, a 25% increase in usage with the extra population?
I think certainly from Mighty's point of view, as I alluded to earlier, managing a leisure centre, it's a very new project for us. There's a lot for us to get to grips with. So I think it's something that down the line, yes, we'll be open to looking at and seeing how we can push ourselves and drive the leisure centre forward. But certainly at this point, there's a lot of other areas that our initial focus needs to be on, and perhaps it's something that we look at in 6 to 12 months' time as to how we manage that side of things in the performance targets.
Certainly within the next few months, 6 to 12 months, as Ed says there is scope to continue to increase. Beyond that point, obviously we can look at it again, but certainly in the next few months there's no reason why it can't continue to grow.
Right, I hope it's up to anybody else. Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, 2 points. There's no profit and loss on your. What's the last year's profit and loss? You've got a nice little 500,000 a year to help you get onto the nice little profit. what was the end figures for 12 months? And you're going to tell me you've not got them because Carillion never gave them to you. But
Exactly.
you've got your manager next to you, he must know. And he's very good. Last year I commented, and he's excellent. So,
It is indeed.
so
I honestly don't know what the profit and loss was in terms of everything combined, you know, in terms of your contribution and things. I don't actually know what the end figure is.
no, but forget that. Income, outcome. Mr. Mitre, what's the...
Yeah, can I just interject just a minute, because we don't want to conflate the 480,000 or 490.
Yeah.
That's another question I've got, is why are the figures different? Because it should be the same every year. But anyway, that is for basically the mortgage payment,
Yeah,
for want of a better
I get
phrase.
that, I
It
understand
doesn't
that.
relate to the operational money coming over
Yeah.
through the till.
Yeah, but that's... Can we not see a profit and loss for a year, you know? Is that not
We-
possible?
I've certainly not had any access to any of Carillion's figures for the last 12 months.
So the business has run without any
So,
profit and loss then? So you just keep
Well-
paying people and
well, Carillion must have, obviously, like I say,
you're going to go the same if you're not.
we've taken on the contract as of the 4th of June, so the emphasis has been on securing people's jobs in that side of things. Obviously, the back of house commercial team from IT will have been delving into all these figures and making sure that it is a contract worth our while taking on in that side of things. But personally, that's outside of my remit. It's not something I can personally comment on, I'm afraid.
That's astonishing, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, but to be fair, I'm not sure that we are entitled to know the profit and loss of Mighty or Carillion, because we have a contract to deliver the leisure centre,
I mean,
and it's up to the operator to ensure they deliver the service. So
as far as Mighty are concerned, we're at a loss because we've not been paid the service fee yet. So as things stand, we're
And,
Right.
and
For our
what,
2
one
weeks.
other question, you've got 600 paid up members, is that correct?
Roughly, yeah. Yeah.
And so we've got this Eastleigh explosion of people coming to live in a lovely place to live.
Yes.
What's the capacity in your leisure centre?
Well, certainly, looking at different areas, there's certainly a lot more scope to have users in the gym as an ongoing, you know, pay-as-you-go sort of option, or even as members. There's a lot more scope for swimmers in swimming lessons. I'd say we could easily find a pool time for another 200 children in swimming lessons. As for the actual figure of members, I don't know what that would be, but it's certainly a lot more than it is now.
And when you came last year, I remember asking you what was the age demographics, and you were going to find that out, but that wasn't on there again.
I can find that. I
Yeah.
can find that out for you.
right, that's a question to be brought back then. Right, let's Councillor Birdsall.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, and I don't know if this is a question for you guys or our officers. I'm looking at I'm a bit similar with Councillor Matthews on, because this whole report is, to me, as a businessman, meaningless without any financials. And I'm looking at the very last paragraph of the report. Success criteria, reduce revenue costs and improve value for money for council tax players. Fine, I think there's a typo there. But all I can pick up from this is we pay, as an authority, £486,000, or do we pay 50% of them? I'm not quite sure. Or we have paid, but it's all meaningless. What is the contract? What is it we're paying? How long is it going to last for? What fluctuation and variation is going to be applied to this figure in relation to the performance? So all of these things are all missing, and I think as a group scrutinising this, it's great to have all of these members going up and classes and all the rest of this, but it's meaningless, because what we're really about here is we're paying these guys a lot of money every year, and that's what we really need, in my view, to be understanding in more detail what that really means. And all we've got is a few words at the end of the whole
I
report.
think to put it into slightly different words but asking the same thing in a different way, I'm quite sure that if Mighty in a year's time or 2 years' time or whatever were making a loss, they'd be soon coming to our door to say we're making a loss, can you pay us some more money? So I suppose by the same token, it will be good to know what sort of profits they're making, because the contract, of course, it's in two parts. 330,000 for the mortgages. Well, I keep calling the mortgage the PFI contract, and then there's a management or a service fee on top of that, isn't there?
Yeah. Darryl, do you
So
want
can I
sorry.
just?
Sorry.
Oh,
Mr.
sorry.
Chairman.
Okay.
You have actually changed my question. So you've got a different question, with due respect. My question is, we've only got these two figures, and I know absolutely nothing about the contract, how it works, how it might fluctuate with relation to the performance and all the rest of what we hear today. So
Well, that's what I was just about to get Kath Marriott to tell us how the contract is broken up.
Okay, so this is, I'm going to pass over to Darryl to be fair, because this is about the contract management hub. But the background to the contract is, it is a PFI contract that was set up a number of years ago, 12 years ago.
No, 2002.
Sorry,
2002.
2002, so
Finishes in 2027.
16 years ago, and it's got a number of years, so many years left to run. And when the contract was set up, it tied the local authority into those payments. So those payments are fixed. Exactly, for the time period. And the way, as members may or may not be aware, but the way the PFI contract operates is at the end of the period, the leisure centre is handed over to the local authority. We don't own it at the moment, but we will own it, and when we get it, it will be as new. That's the principle, isn't it? So it might seem that we're paying more than we might otherwise pay, perhaps, but when we get it, and it belongs to us to manage on our own if we want to, it is as a new building. So Darryl is, so that's how the finance works. So it is a bit fixed, the financial payments, and we can't renegotiate those. They are set. So if the question about there's not as much financial data as you would like kind of goes back in a bit to the chairman's previous point, in that Carillion were a private company. They had an agreement, a contract with us to provide whatever their profit or loss accounts were. You know, they've got to provide that service for us. They obviously then defaulted, and that part of the business was bid for and taken over by Mighty, which was, again, that was outside of our control, part of the process of the company going into administration and then being awarded to Mighty. And did you allude to KPMG managing that process, I think? Did you say that? No? I've picked that up. Okay.
PwC.
Oh, PwC, beg your pardon, I knew it was one of those. PwC.
PwC.
Okay, so that's where the finance goes, and now it's going to be run by Mighty. Again, whether or not they make a profit or loss on that particular site or any other, they're contracted to provide that service to us as part of that payment, the annual payment, mortgage, and then the management charge. So it's all, can we put that to one side? We don't have control over that. The performance data that relates to that comes back to the other element of the contract that we'll ask Darryl to say a bit more about. And I think the fact that Darryl's looking to increase those targets, put some more stretching targets on, and link into the population growth of East League is an ongoing working relationship with the management and Mighty at the site. And it's obviously in their interest to boost the numbers, because that will make the site more profitable for them, but won't really affect the figures that we're paying. Darryl?
Can I just, before you answer, can I just, why, because it was my understanding that the annual payment was fixed, so I think it was 330,000 plus the, so these figures here at the bottom page 15 are different. Ignoring the typo, but the figures, annual figures are actually different, so I don't understand that.
I'm quite happy to look into that as part of the minutes. And I'm aware that Helen, who's actually the contract manager for this, in the back of the room, and I don't want to put her on the spot, but I would imagine, Helen, there's some sort of RPI interest applied on those
Be indexed, won't it?
each year.
So are you saying that the county council's bit is index linked because the PFI contract, what I call the mortgage, the PFI contract is absolutely fixed.
I
It's the
think
same every year.
I think we're in danger of not giving, you know, I think the best, I can't do this to Ricky, but the best thing we can do on this point is to come back to you with a follow-up note explaining those figures. So I think, you know, members understand there's two parts of the contract, the mortgage bit and the maintenance bit. Whether they're RPI linked, we can get the clarification on that and make sure that we've got that figure, that detail, come back to you.
I think the other really important thing to mention, though, as part of the actual contract management, is we will be reporting this time next year on Mighty's performance, and clearly there's an awful lot of data that we have year on year going forward. So, as I sort of said at the start, we're going to be very, very closely monitoring performance. Early signs are it's good. Clearly, if it dips, then we will be in there, and we will be reporting back via portfolio holder, etc. If there are any problems. At the moment, we don't anticipate any problems, but hopefully this time next year, the proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating, in the fact that hopefully Mighty have increased usage, and that we're seeing even better performance than we had last year. And like I said again at the start, actual performance for the calendar year was very good when Ben and the Carillion team were in there. So hopefully that's going to improve.
Okay. Right, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. Just one point, you mentioned the annual payment. Is the annual payment made at the start of the year, at the end of the year, or monthly? And if it's made at the start of the year, if it's made at the start of the year, does that mean Carillion have got some of our money that we're not going to get back, and so there's been a cost to the council?
The due diligence that was undertaken when Mighty took over did show that there's no cost to the council, the change of contract. Darryl, the payment schedule, is it quarterly?
I believe, and again, I don't want to get too much on it. I believe it is paid on a quarterly basis, yes. But what we will do as part of feeding back on the payments is also just confirm that with you as well. So when all the payments are actually made.
Okay. Did you have another question?
Yes.
I thought you wanted to query the health and safety.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so my other question was on the health and safety. You can see that the accident rate's gone up, and swimming usage has actually gone down by 2.223%, and there was 24 accidents in the swimming pool. So is there a bit of a trend? Is there something happening? I know you mentioned a lot of people slipping.
Yeah,
Are they blowing the whistles and telling people to stop running?
No, I mean, some of it, though, there's an area where the children enter poolside to come for their swim lessons, and they walk around, and there was an area which seemed to be quite slippery, so we've put a mat there now, which is there permanently, and that has really helped reduce the issue. So, I mean, a lot of it could be based around that issue. So that's one thing we've done to try and alleviate slips, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Birdsall.
Right. So, similar vein. Back to the financial viability. So, if it's a fixed payment, okay, we're going to have some clarification on that. How can we reduce revenue costs and improve value for money for council taxpayers? That's a statement in this report. Surely that's not achievable if the cost is the same every year. So, could that someone explain that?
I think that's down to the profit and loss of the operator.
Well, no, because we've just been told, as an authority, we will pay this money the same every year. yet in this report it says the success criteria is to reduce revenue costs and improve value for money for council taxpayers. But how's that good for this authority? I think I'll have to wait for.
Oh, that's it. So, well, the principle would be that there's a fixed fee that the authority is paying. If we can maximise what we get for that, so the fee is going to be the fee, whatever it is. Now, the more that we can get for that money, the better. So the costs to do with contributions towards utilities and such like, the work that Ben's done about looking at being more energy efficient means that there's more funds there available within the contract price that they can provide more community benefit. So I think that's where that statement comes in, and the things that Ben's been looking to introduce and deliver over the past few years, he's added to the provision of services at the leisure centre, but within the fixed price contract for the council, if that makes sense.
That makes sense, but I still go back to my previous point then. We have no financial information to demonstrate that. All we have are numbers which aren't financially related. So in looking at the performance, we've got no financial information whatsoever to say we're doing good, we're doing bad, we're saving money, we've got more value for money. So I think that really is missing from this whole report.
Could I just say, in terms of the contract and everything, Mighty are contracted to Eastleigh Schools Limited, which is in effect IML, Infrastructure Management Limited. So any fees the council are paying goes to them. It's not coming direct to Mighty, so it's not a pass through either. It's dealt with separately. So as far as what you're seeing coming out of the council coffers, that's not going straight into Mighty's pockets.
I think for what you said about maximising what we get for our money sounds to me like it's more about Mighty providing value in kind to the community. So that's a bit difficult to quantify it in monetary terms, isn't it?
It says here though, and it's not what the answer was.
Yeah. So we need a bit more clarification as to how much. Well, it's basically down to how much control have we got over the finances, and the answer is, as far as I can see, absolutely zippo, because it's a fixed price. And the only time it would manifest itself is if there's a product, as I said, and we've had this happen before with other contractors, haven't we, where they've come to us and said, we're making a thumping great loss. Yeah. So by the same token, if somebody's making a thumping great profit, perhaps we should know about that as well.
But we don't want to be in that position.
Well, the answer is, I'm not sure if we. Is it to do with this particular? Right. Okay. Would you like to? Did you get the flavour of those? Would you like to maybe comment? Probably more as a regional manager. You're probably more qualified, are you?
Yeah, I mean, like I touched on, that side of things, the contract isn't directly with Mighty. We're subcontracted by IML to provide those services. So, with regards that agreement, it would be best to speak to a representative from IML or Project Co.
I have to say, what you've highlighted, Councillor Bearsall, is the PFI contract. The whole debate in 2002 is now manifesting itself again, because basically we're tied into a contract that you can do nothing with. I'll tell you where I am on this.
It's another farmhouse we got ourselves into.
I'm just going to put my cards on the table to everyone now. I'm not happy in voting to approve or adopt this report whatsoever, because of those reasons that, we've just, what we're approving.
I agree with Councillor Bearsall as well. I forgot what it said there.
Well, it doesn't say about approving. It's recommended that the PMB notes and comments, which we're doing.
Yeah.
I think the answer would be is that we are minuting our frustration. But the thing is, it's historical because I have to say I've been frustrated for the last 16 years about being tied into a PFI contract, and this is the frustration of a PFI contract. Councillor Edwards.
Perhaps just to change the focus a little, Chair, because I feel we've reached the buffers on that one. And forgive me, just as this is my first time at the committee, and this may already have been discussed at the previous meetings, but I'd appreciate it if a few dots could be joined between the 15th of January when Carillion collapsed and the 4th of June when Mighty took over the contract. That must have been a period of considerable uncertainty. I find it helpful just to know what the Borough Council was able to do, first of all, during that period. And secondly, I'm particularly concerned about the staff. This would have been an extremely unsettling period for them. And whether the terms and conditions they were on before are exactly the same, and also what is happening about their pension provision, because the collapse of Carillion, and it's been in the papers now, there's a hole in the pension of £580 million. Now, I think, you know, this is serious stuff, and I'd welcome some comments from the officers, or
Well, I think
Darryl
perhaps
can help on
can
that.
Ed is anxious to. Would you like to comment, and then Mr. Birch can?
Yeah, so
take it
just to fill everybody in on the full timeline. So Carillion Services Limited went into liquidation early January. At Eastleigh Leisure Centre, there was a difference between the employing company within Carillion for some of the staff. So the majority were employed by Carillion Services Limited. Some were employed by Carillion AMBS, which hadn't gone into liquidation. That was a smaller entity of Carillion, which PwC had not got around to dealing with yet, and was just left trading for the majority of that 5-month period. So what it was looking like was there was the potential for the majority of staff would be made redundant as Carillion went into liquidation, so TUPE didn't apply, and that there was going to be a few members of staff that were contracted by Carillion AMBS, which TUPE would apply. That caused a lot of the problems with negotiations between all the stakeholders, with Project Co, Mighty, PwC, the remaining senior managers within Carillion, and that was one of the sticking points that led to it sort of dragging on as long as it did. In the end, I think it was round about early May sort of time, Carillion AMBS was wound up. So in effect then all staff have been made redundant by Carillion. And again, like I mentioned, TUPE didn't apply, but to show a gesture of goodwill from Mighty, it was agreed that we would honour their existing rates of pay, their length of service, and also we would continue with any pensions that they were already signed up to. So the key terms of the contracts have been maintained by Mighty, and a lot of the sort of finer terms and conditions that they were signed up to with Carillion are very much alike for like as to what Mighty's standard T's and C's are. So on the whole, I'm quite confident in saying that the majority of staff haven't really lost out throughout this process. I'm sure they've had many a sleepless night and a lot of stress due to the timescale of everything, but ultimately they have been re-employed on very much the same terms as those that they had with Carillion, and also they are going through the redundancy process and have the right to make a claim. So in my eyes, it's worked out as best as it possibly can, I think, for the staff, bearing in mind the circumstances.
Mr. Birch, would you like to?
Thank you, Chairman. I think from our point of view, it was obviously difficult for contract managers going in there and seeing people who were unsure about what was happening with their jobs Ultimately, those staff aren't employed by Rushcliffe, and our number one thing was to make sure that that leisure centre still worked for the residents during that period of uncertainty. So you were saying, can we sort of put some dots to the gaps? Helen was going in every other week, weekly on occasions, coming in at weekends, just to basically check that the leisure centre was running, because our number one thing was very much about let's not let the service drop for the residents.
I think, is it true to say that from a resident or a user point of view, did they actually know whether it was Carillion, Mighty or Fred Bloggs? In other words, was it just business as usual?
That's exactly what described it as business as usual. It was very much, there's no change there, there's no new notice boards outside with Mighty plastered all over them or anything, so it's very much, as far as they're concerned, they were just going to Eastleigh Leisure Centre.
Does that satisfy you?
To a certain extent, but I noticed very carefully Ed was choosing his words, the majority of staff. Basically, most of the terms and conditions. There are obviously some exceptions to that, and there will have been, I suspect, one or two human casualties from this process.
Let's just bring in, because I understand, am I correct that one or two decided to leave or go somewhere else? Or?
Yeah, so to begin with, there was 49 members of staff employed by Carillion at the point of liquidation. Throughout that, there was a couple of members of staff that left in between that time during that 5-month period that moved on to other jobs, and then others which have gone off travelling and off to university and have taken the decision not to sign up with Mighty in effect. And with regards to my comments about the majority are on the same terms that they were before, there were a number of staff who have almost worked there since day one and have been tupied over numerous times from old council contracts where they would have had increased annual leave entitlement and there would be split pay scales and that kind of thing. So that's where there's been losses for some where that hasn't continued because there was no obligation for us to do so.
Good. Right. I'm conscious that we've been going well over an hour. Are there any more questions relating to the operation or the service? No. So I've come to an abrupt stop.
just to touch on that, if anybody does have any further queries, please feel free to circulate my details and I'll happily answer what I can or make the necessary inquiries higher up the food chain if needs be.
Right, thank you. Well, I think the one thing that we are looking for is some clarification on the financial model or the finances, and I appreciate that's not at Mighty's door really. That's at our own door. But anyway, right. Okay. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to come and talk to us. It's much appreciated. Please continue to provide a good service, or even better is always good. And we'll let you get back to the day job. You're very welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting, but I suspect that you probably are anxious to get away. So please feel free.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, do you want to ask the members to pass the recommendation?
Oh. Well,
I know, but...
the recommendation. Yeah, I've just been prompted. Can I have your attention, please? I've just been prompted that we need to pass the recommendation, but the recommendation is that we note and comment, and I think that's what we've been doing for the last hour. I'm not sure what recommendation we can actually pass, to be honest.
Is there any more information before the next time we review this? Or
Yes, we will pick up the actions from the meeting and circulate between this meeting and next meeting. So it'll be probably, give us a couple of weeks and we'll get the additional information requested out to you. So you don't have to wait till the next meeting. You certainly don't have to wait until they come again. It's, within the next fortnight or so.
And I'll use this point now to just make a request. Can we not have any more recommendations to note anything? I mean, noting something is it doesn't achieve a lot. Right. Okay. Item 5, performance monitoring. Is somebody wanting to start? Charlotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Evening, everybody. Performance monitoring Q4 report. So this is the end of 2017-18. Not intending to go through the whole report in a lot of detail, but I would like to bring your attention to the bottom of page 17, where we state that 13 performance highlights have been selected at the end of the year. 9 of those are new in this final quarter. Specifically, I would like to bring your attention to the excellent performance for major applications. That's our planning team, who have achieved 90% at the year end against a target of 60%. This is despite an increased workload and increased complexity of the applications coming in. We have had the best year ever for council tax and NNDR payment, and that's the top of page 18. And despite it being an exception at Q2, corporate sickness across the board was brought within target, and that was 7.44 days against a target of 8 days at the end of the year. Also at the bottom of page 18, there's the progress of the exceptions that have been reported through the year. So you can see that progress has been made, in particular, as well as the corporate sickness that I've just mentioned. The average waiting time for applicants rehoused by the choice-based lettings scheme is no longer an exception at the end of the year. We've brought that down to 32 weeks against a target of 33 weeks. I am more than happy, as always, to answer any questions that you might have about the tasks or the performance indicators, but I think it's fair to say that overall this has been a very positive year.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I mean, one of the big highlights for me was the council tax and the business rate collection. I mean, that is a phenomenal rate. So that is certainly something that where considerable congratulations need to be passed on. You talked about the bottom of page 17. 90% of what and 60% of what?
One moment. Major applications. So these are the big applications that we get for housing development.
I know what major application is. What's the 90% and the 60% mean?
Oh, achieving them within their target of 13 weeks. So the 13 weeks is the national target for doing major applications in, and we're actually achieving 90% of them within that time.
As opposed to 60% being the target.
Okay.
Oh, I don't understand the 60%. Target's 13 weeks. So,
We're supposed to approve 60% of them within 13 weeks.
60% of the volume of applications. In other words, in theory, the other 40% could take 10 years.
I get that now. Right, okay, so my first question then is 60% for a target is very, very low. That's, come on, 60%.
I'm afraid it's a national target and not one that we have set.
That's terrible.
We're superior to national.
Absolutely.
We are doing a lot better than some other authorities.
Can I just suggest then why we don't have to stick to the national target? We can set our own targets. Let's set it higher. If we're getting 90%, let's set our target for 90% and try and.
What's wrong with 100%?
Well, targets have to be realistic, remember, and achievable.
95%.
So yeah, you can set it slightly above what you're achieving to drive improvement. But yeah, come on, let's move off this 60%, please.
Right, okay, Councillor Edwards.
I think if you increase targets, then you're also almost bound to increase the resource that's put in to achieve that target. And you've got to be, I'm sure Councillor Biggs would be happy to increase the resource to ensure that happens.
That's called throwing down the gauntlet.
Oh, no.
If I could come back to that then.
But
The view of increasing. Let me come back to that. The view of increasing resource to achieve a target is not really a realistic way forward. What we should be looking at is becoming more efficient in doing what we're doing first. And in most organisations, targets are achieved by becoming more efficient and working in a lean way rather than just saying, well, let's put more people on it. So, you know, I don't agree with you in your
well,
proportional
being as we've achieved 90%, if the target was 90%, there wouldn't need to be any more resources, and therefore, by making it say 95%, then you are challenging the officers to work more efficiently and provide the service more efficiently, because to go from 90 to 95 is probably one extra application, I should think, or half, maybe even only half an application.
Can I just say, Chair? I think you've got to be realistic here, because you're looking at large housing applications, and there's a myriad of different things that they don't fit the ABC. You know, it's something you couldn't put 100%.
No, we're not saying 100%. We're saying take it to 95.
But I think even 75 would be.
But look at the past performance.
Only just about. Yeah, I know.
sorry, look at the past performance. 2015, 97. 16, 83. 17, 88. Now, 90. So, you know, you're years of exceeding 60% and being around about 90. So the target needs to change.
We've got to match the streetwise. They're 100%.
I think it's a fair challenge from members, certainly, and we can take that back. I would just thank Councillor Thurman for his comments as well, though, because as you know, they are complex and it's not a static position. However, you know, we are tasked with resourcing based against the number of applications that come in, and the amount of income that the council receives from those planning applications should pay for them to be dealt with. There is an issue nationally at the moment with regards recruiting planners. It is an issue, but we continue to keep an eye on that. But I think it's a valid challenge to increase the target, and it's something that we need to keep monitoring and reporting back on. And it's a moving picture, as we know, and we are expecting, certainly following the adoption of the local plan part 2, that there will be an influx of planning applications. So there are some periods of peaks and troughs in the cycle of when the planning applications come in. But it's good performance at the moment.
At the end of the day, a target is a target, and there's no reason why you shouldn't have a challenging target, because, you know, if they only get 89%, there isn't going to be any great portcullis crashing down, or somebody's head's not going to get chopped off, or whatever. Why not have an ambitious target to show, I was going to say the public or the customers, that we intend to achieve
Higher than... Yeah.
Because it's about dealing with them, isn't it? It's not about whether they get approved or refused. It's about processing.
But, Chair, on the other hand...
I'm not a chair.
No,
I'm a chairman.
Chairman, fine. We don't want to look bad in the public's eyes that we're below target all the time, which we could well do with these large developments. And if the,
90%.
yeah, well, it's not forced to stay at that.
Oh, well, we'll make it 10%.
Well, but it's only our own target, isn't it? It's not as though we're not going to get punished by not.
We're talking about trying to improve and provide better service.
It's about providing ambition. Have I convinced you, Councillor Edwards? You're looking very quizzical.
Yes. No, I don't think I'm convinced, but I've heard the arguments.
You ought to go into politics. Right. So, yeah, I mean, having said all that, what power have we got to alter any of these targets?
Well, there's a national target set. We could set something locally. Is that fair, Charlotte?
I think it's fair to say that the targets that we are looking at in this performance report were set by this board 3 years ago when we agreed the corporate strategy and the basket of indicators. So next year, after the election, should you all be lucky enough to still be sitting around this table, we will be developing the corporate strategy again and bringing a basket of indicators for you to decide on. What do you want to choose and what targets do you want to put against them?
So what are we doing? Are we putting a marker down just so that when the figures next come out that we should put a more stretched, ambitious target of 90%? That's a very
Oh, let's be realistic here. We can change this today. We don't need to wait until another year.
I wasn't suggesting a year.
We don't want to wait.
Oh, right.
Let's change it. We need to change it today. Let's just do it and move on.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. How about everybody else? You're proposing it. You're seconding it. All those in favour?
Can I just say we ought to just have some input from the service manager for planning, that they can, we'll take back your recommendation that the target's looked at, and let's have some, professional input into that target as well.
If I may, Andrew will be here at the next meeting because you've got planning enforcement on the agenda. So it may be something that actually you want to discuss there when he's in the room and can give you some more information.
Well, in that case, what we're doing is we're recommending that a target of 90% be considered to be implemented. And if there's a query, if there's a problem with it, then they can come back to us, can't they?
We will report back, yes. Thank you.
Rather than wait until the next meeting and just bring it up.
No, yeah, I accept that. We'll take it as an action to be reported back on in the interim. Yeah.
Okay, right.
I've got some more questions.
Thought you might have. Right. No, has anybody else got any before Councillor Biswell hogs the entire? Has anybody else got any other questions on? I mean, before he does, I'm going to talk about sickness rate because we're back to targets again, and 7.44 days is better than a target of 8 days. I'm not quite sure why the target is 8 days.
Nationally set target.
I know, but
Again.
even the county council's got a target of 7 days. What doesn't I'm not interested in what's set nationally, to be honest. So I'd just like to know.
Yeah, it is. It's a realistic target. We have been well above that in the past. I think we've even been about 12 or 13 days in the past. It's higher than it would be for an organisation that doesn't have manual staff. So members of the board who've been here for some time know that there is a difference between manual staff and office-based staff. We've implemented things to help reduce the sickness level from when it was at that high level. So we have an absence management policy. We work with staff if they are having frequent absences, and we do monitoring, informal then formal. and that has really helped bring the figures down. So if we were consistently getting below 7 days or 6 days, then I would say yes. The target is always 0. Really, we don't want any sickness, absence if we can avoid it. But reality is that that's not achievable. You know, there are people who are injured at work. There are people who have long-term illnesses, and that, you know, there will be those figures. So I think what I would say to you is that 8 days, whilst it is a national target, it's also at the moment realistic for us. If we could come to you and say we'd like to see that lower, well, of course we'd like to see it lower, but is it achievable for it to be lower? I don't think it is at the moment.
All right. Okay. Councillor Phillips.
It might be achievable to get that figure lower. I know sometimes if I'm not very well, I have the option to work from home. So I might not be fit enough to go into work, but I can work from home. Is that an option for council staff?
Depending on the circumstances, yes it is. What we don't want to do is mask genuine illness by saying to people you can work from home and then the figures don't look realistic. However, if somebody is on a phased return to work, or perhaps they can't travel, but they are able to do that, you know, perhaps previously if someone had broken their leg and they couldn't drive, they would be off sick. That's not the case anymore. They can remote work. The IT is there in place to do that. So I would say that yes, there is some flexibility, management discretion, but we don't want to mask genuine figures as well.
Councillor Jones.
Can I ask about the percentage of community support grants spent on page 19? It says it's under the target, but it's close to last year's spending. I just wonder, is there any sort of like reason why that is, or is there just peaks and troughs throughout the year? Do people wait until the end of the year to put in applications, or?
We do have a big influx towards the end of the year of people applying for lots of their grant. It would be nicer if it was evenly spaced from an admin point of view, but also in terms of you monitoring the figures. But it doesn't change year on year. The profile is pretty much the same each year. And it depends on what groups are asking councillors for what funds, how much those funds are. But it's usually within the 10% of the same amount. It's not too much of a difference.
Okay. Councillor Bearsford.
Yes. On performance exceptions report, the second one, which is value to date savings generated as a result of partnership.
Sorry, which page are you on?
For some reason, pages don't come off my screen. It's this bit.
Oh, we can see that.
Yeah, good for us.
Can you stick
your
in, for the benefit of the recording, can you put your speaker on as well?
Sorry, yeah. So yeah, in the performance exceptions Q4 report, the second item, which is value to date of savings generated as a result of partnership activities, the current target is 20,000. The current value says 0. Says Cabinet at its meeting in January 2000, it approved the formation of delivery partnership. Right. I just don't understand. Can someone explain that a bit more to me, please?
The actual figures, yeah, because that's the Positive Futures.
Yeah, but it talks about
that's-
savings generated as a result of partnership activities. Well, surely we've got. Let me explain a little bit further what I'm asking. Surely we've got lots of partnership activities, not just one. I mean, this is referring to one particular thing. I just read there the Young project, but why isn't there anything in there? Because we've got lots of partnership activities.
Is this a reduction of the amount that was invested in the project? I don't know. Is that where the saving is?
I don't quite understand it. Yeah. Doesn't make sense.
Charlotte, are you
Sorry,
comment on that one? Or?
I can comment on that one. It's a timing issue. What I was doing is trying to flick forward and see if there was any further information in the actual detail. I think that the reason that nothing is showing and no saving has been made is because it's only very recently that the decision's been made. The transfer didn't happen until April, and therefore savings will be realised during the course of this year rather than last year.
Right, I understand that. So maybe I'm just a little bit misled when I read the title. Value to date of savings generated a result of partnership activities. I mean, we've got more than one partnership, haven't we? Not just this. I mean, if it's aimed at one particular thing, then surely that title should be aimed at one thing. But I'd want to see it across the board of partnership activities anyway.
I think that's something that can be tightened up with the. So these are set when the corporate strategy is set up, and so it's done for a sort of 4-year period. And sometimes these targets are set without specific things in mind, apart from that it's a general principle the council wants to achieve. Yes. So each year there might be something different within that. I think it's probably something that we could tighten up a bit when the corporate strategy is recast and the performance indicators that sit below the tasks are put in there.
I still don't understand why we haven't got anything in there though, because we've got 2016-17. Wasn't there anything happening in 16-17 then that was of a partnership activity that reduced or achieved the result of savings? Or I don't understand why there's nothing in there.
Neither do I, which is why I've made a note.
We'll look into it.
Yeah, we'll look into it.
Perfect.
And we will get back to you.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
The next question, you had is that the only question you had?
No, other questions.
Oh, go on then. Keep going.
Other questions I have, I suppose someone else might have these questions as well. Just going back down in the report, there are a lot of reds on the report.
On page 36 and 37.
Yeah, corporate scorecard. Corporate scorecard. A lot of reds. Reds are bad.
The red green colour blind. Oh, no.
Yeah, so there's a lot of them.
So which ones are you worried about?
All of them. Anything that's red is bad.
Some of them, well, taking as an example, where it's referring to burglaries and robberies and vehicle crimes, how much influence have we got to either make those targets better or worse? In other words,
None
in our
whatsoever.
community safety partnership work or wherever, how much influence have we got to influence the police or anybody else?
With regard to those three in particular, none. No influence whatsoever. It's come up regularly at the board. Just how much we're not able to do that. All we can do is report against the targets that the police set. With regard to the numerous red, they are covered at the beginning of the report with an explanation as to why they are not quite meeting their targets in certain states. So whilst they appear in this list just as figures, they are covered elsewhere in the report with an explanation.
Right, so if we look at the first one then,
What about it?
yes, I just want to see.
It's at the bottom of page 18. Oh, you haven't got page numbers.
It doesn't say what, that just says why.
Oh, what are we doing about it?
Yeah.
Well, Andrew's obviously coming to the next meeting to talk about enforcement, not appeals. But I mean, there's training for members, there's training for officers, there's guidance on taking planning decisions. Ultimately, people will appeal the decision if they don't like it, and some are, oh, Charlotte wants to say something, but some, you know, it's not entirely within the local authority's control which way the planning appeal will go.
Well, a lot of it's down to the planning committee, isn't it? And there are two phrases that are often used, one of them being, in the opinion of the officer. But then there's a counter phrase, in the opinion of the members, they might take a different view.
If I could just say, wherever we've got a red, I think we should have what the actions are to turn it from red to green. And that's what I'd like to request from this meeting. We've got
Find
quite a...
further information on page 32, which explains the background to the expectancy. So it's not just got how many appeals. What it's got is an explanation of what's going on and how to
Yeah, but not
manage
that,
things.
that's a specific, but there's a lots of reds. So within this report, I mean, maybe I've missed it then, I don't see, this is now red, this is the reason, yes, that's there, but this is what we're going to do to go from red to green. That's the missing link.
So
Yeah.
I think
that I'm
that
looking
works for
for.
some of them. It might not work for all
Might
of
not
them.
work for all of them.
So, for example, percentage of investment strategy committed. There's a sum of money that the council allocated to asset investments. Now we could be ahead of that target if we'd bought a couple more properties. However, we don't want to spend it for the sake of it. It's got to be the right purchase. I think we regularly touch on the percentage of the community support grant allocation spent to date, don't we? Most meetings, and certainly Councillor Turing is very active in trying to encourage members to allocate their grant funding there. And the fly tipping cases, that is one that we've covered, but we can certainly, I think we've done a briefing note on that, which we can update you on if required. That is a national issue, and the Notts Forum for fly tipping has just been reactivated to try and have a coordinated approach across Nottinghamshire to prevent fly tipping. You may have seen in some of the hotspots in your areas the signage saying that it's being recorded and all of the rest of it. So there's active work being done on there.
But it doesn't get away from the main principle, which I agree with, is that where there's a red, we are here to scrutinise, and so it would be incumbent on us to have an explanation as to why it's red and what can be done about it and what are we going to do about it. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable request.
Yeah, I think we would try and do that. If we need to tighten up on that, we will do, but that certainly we would want to be doing that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, good. Right, Councillor Jones.
I've just got two questions. One's about fly tipping. I note on here that we've got an increase of 220 above the current target. I just wondered who actually pays for the clean-up and the disposal of the fly tipping.
You do. The
So
taxpayer.
there's a cost to the Borough Council each year for that. Okay. And do we have the figures on how much that actually costs us?
Somewhere.
So some of it will be included as part of the contract, the prime contract with Streetwise. How easy it is to put a cost to it, I don't know. I said to Darryl earlier, I said, are you going to stay for the performance management bit or not? And we looked at the things, and I said, we might get a question about fly tipping, but we thought we might. Anyway, we can find out. We'll have a look at that, but it is a cost to the council. Obviously, we're doing what we can to try and reduce it. But yeah, Streetwise go out, they pick up the fly tipping, then we have to dispose of it. And particularly if it's asbestos issue, that's going to be more costly. We might have to get out specialised contractors to come and deal with that.
Sorry, excuse me. Did you say you had another?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Far away with the other one.
Thank you. It's on page 25 at the bottom, about the regeneration of Cotgrave. I just wondered, it says at the bottom, the tender for the public realm work is likely to be issued in June. I just wondered if this had been done, and if so, who was the company that would be undertaking the work? And it also says that the multi-service centre is due to be completed the end of September 2018. I just wondered if the target was still September, and was there an official handover date?
Right, I'll do the second part first. Was due to be the end of September. We're currently about 2.5 weeks behind because of weather, so we try and pull it back. Ideally, the end of September. It could be October, but it's pretty close to being on target. As far as an official handover date goes, the different organisations that are going into the building will each have their different sort of mobilisation, if I can call it that, time scales and time periods. So the library would take two to 4 weeks to get themselves in there. The GPs, I'm not sure of. They will work out their time scale for, you know, vacating and moving into the new building. There will no doubt be an official opening once everybody's in there. The public realm works package hasn't been put out to tender yet, so I can't tell you who's been awarded it. The time scale for that is quite imminent. We're hoping to have them on site probably November, December time. So it will be going out possibly just before the summer break. It's not far off. It's been prepared. So it basically links into the timescale of when the works start, and the demolition possibly will be January rather than before Christmas. So it's a little bit fluid, but it's coming on, and I can probably let you know outside the meeting of more details on the timing of that. That's okay.
Councillor Jeffries.
As you know, we've had very serious problems in Cotgrave with enormous amounts of rubbish dumped off on several of the fields over the last 2.5 years. I would just like to say thank you to the people who work for Streetwise, Chairman, because I go round regularly, at least once a week, to see if there's any more rubbish there. I went on one morning and a couple from Streetwise were actually extricating rubbish which had been deliberately thrown in among the stinging nettles and the briars and so on. And these people, you know, are doing a jolly good job, and I really wouldn't wish on my worst enemy the job of having to go and pick up other people's filth. And my heart goes out to them, and I would like us to express our thanks to those people who do that under appalling circumstances and remain cheerful.
Yes, I'm sure we can do that. Councillor Bailey.
Hello. Could I come back please again to fly tipping? It's saying this is increasing nationally. Is this not because, in fact, I can't get that quite right, but basically it's only the tips have been closed, haven't they, nationally? So what is going to happen in this area to make sure that we do something proactive to actually get tips or recycling centres in convenient locations, please?
So the provision of tips or recycling centres is a county provision. I think from conversations with Darryl, the closure of the tip at Langer hasn't had a massive effect on fly tipping in Rushcliffe, not as much as we might have thought. It's potentially more linked to the charges that you have to pay to dispose of, or people have to pay to dispose of rubbish. I do know that Councillor Clark might want to say something with County Council hat on, but I know that County Council have made a commitment to look for another site within the borough of Rushcliffe for an additional household waste recycling centre. But I don't know that they've found a site. I know that the Rugby Road site is busy. There are queues. It is a busy site. It has been identified by the County Council as something they want to address. Finding an appropriate alternative site. I don't think they've found one yet.
Basically, they've allocated £2.5 million to find or to finance a new site, but yeah, but it's not. No site has been identified as yet. That's
thank you, Chairman. Not to do with fly tipping, but on page 24, the bottom item section, with regarding the purchases of property, I just wonder if that is still reading correctly.
I think what you have to bear in mind is that this is the position up to the 31st of March 2018. So no, if we were writing it today, that would not be a correct statement,
Okay.
but on the 31st of March it was.
Okay. Not quite sure that's
Well,
right.
yeah, I know it's a bit of
because it hadn't been purchased. Whether it was the 31st of March, before or after the 31st of March. Money didn't change hands, so nothing was purchased.
Sorry, which one are you querying? Which property?
Colville.
It says 2 properties have been purchased in 2017-18, one in Colville, one at Finch Close, Nottingham. Colville didn't go to anything, did it?
No. Didn't happen.
Barden. It's the Barden site.
Well, Barden is at Colville, yeah.
Yes, that happened.
Oh, this isn't the one that didn't happen.
No.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Right, okay.
Since this report has been written, the council's purchased another property, the co-op in Lady Bay, but that's the one that wouldn't be referred to. So I think Charlotte and I were about understanding there.
All right.
But another one has been purchased in Colville.
No,
Okay.
the Colville one is correct. That's the Barden property. That is correct. The Finch Close property is correct. We were looking at one that fell through.
In Colville.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yes,
It was.
That's right.
This is what- this is
that's
why
right.
it's
That's
Yes,
why
so
the
there would have been
confusion's
two.
arisen.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Great, that's that one clarified. Any other questions? Are we finished? No more questions from anybody? Right. So, in terms of a recommendation, which we've done because it was to consider, so can we just recap on what we want out of this? We've got the Reds actions, and what else was there?
There was the cost of fly tipping, the timescale of the Cotgrave Public Realm tender,
And an aspiration on the target on
the
major
target,
applications.
the target for the major applications.
and the other one, which was to do with the savings on partnership.
That's right, looking at the savings on partnerships. Yes,
I've got all those.
Thank you.
noted down.
Right. Okay. Everybody happy with those? All in favour? Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you very much. Right. The time is getting on. So, item 6, the annual report. Well, this is in the hands of those members that have returned from last year. And can I suggest that I'm assuming that if this is approved, then I'm assuming it will be Councillor Wheeler that would actually present it at full council, subject to returning members agreeing with the contents of the report. I think that's all we need to know. Is everybody happy with the contents of the report? And does it go forward to council? Good. Thank you very much indeed. Work programme. Item 7. The work programme for the next 3 meetings. Any comments, questions on those? I mean, personally, I wonder if, although it's going to be a big agenda, isn't it? Whether the September one is appropriate or another one. Planning applications. Whether we could scrutinise sort of the communications and who decides on what's material and what's non-material consideration. Because there have been instances where something's gone through which it's very debatable as to whether it's a non-material consideration. I don't know, is it performance or not?
I'm not sure that it is for this committee. There's training that goes on regularly, obviously, but I think what you're looking at is have the decisions been made?
Yeah, by officers, not by members.
Right, okay. We've got the...
It's about the delivery of the service.
Yes, yeah.
Of the planning service.
There was obviously there was the planning peer review that was carried out, which then had action plan which went to Cabinet. We have got the planning enforcement update at the next meeting. I think perhaps if I can take the suggestion, and it might be one that we look at the scrutiny chairman and vice chairman's meeting, but also with some input, I think from Dave Mitchell, would be appropriate as the executive manager overseeing that particular service. So if we can take that as a suggestion that's been raised, without actually putting it on the work programme at this point, we need to consider where best that would be looked at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would that be an action though from this meeting? So
yes.
Yeah. Oh yes, yeah. We'll report back. Yeah.
Definitely. Right. Anybody else got any comments, requests? You know, scrutinising colour of paper clips, all that sort of stuff. No other requests at all. Everybody happy with the? Any questions, comments on any of the next 3 meetings programme? No. So I'll take it from that. Then you're all happy with those then. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll change them later. Sorry. Right. Okay. Well, maybe as it progresses, doesn't stop us
No, that's right.
amending things at a future occasion if necessary. Okay. Right. That's that. So that's the end of the agenda. So thank you very much indeed for your attendance. Declare the meeting closed. And I'll switch the recording off.